Welcome to Season 5 of Own Your Divine Light Show. I am Janet Miller, also known as Yarra Atlantica Miller, and the theme of this show is the Divine Human Rising, Recovering Our Sacred Truth. And this show is an exploration of the sacred truth, the secret truths that have been concealed from us. And we are letting go of this old system that no longer works for us and has held us back from becoming the divine human rising we are meant to be. And today we are having that amazing and incredible practical mystic, which I love that because I realize how practical you really are, Maureen. Maureen St Germaine. Welcome, Maureen.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure.
Yes, I'm really excited to have you today, Maureen. And I'm going to tell you a little more, which if you don't know Maureen, I don't know where you've been. But anyway, here is Maureen. Maureen St Germaine has for over 25 years of experience in the areas of mystical and sacred traditions. And she is known as the practical mystic. Maureen is a prolific teacher and facilitator of spiritual knowledge for contemporary life, having taught in 24 countries, including at Kripalu and Omega Institute. I missed that. I want to have to, are you ever going back there, Maureen, to Kripalu or Omega?
We'll see. It's by invitation.
Yep, it is.
I keep hearing from people who've been at Kripalu. They're selling your book like crazy.
Yeah?
Yeah. So sooner or later, somebody will put two and two together and say, hey, you want to come back? And frankly, our schedule is nicely full. Both of those experiences were very wonderful. Very.
Yeah, I live closer to Kripalu and I've never been to Omega. Can you believe it? I never have. I don't know why. But anyway, your books have been translated into 12 languages and she has appeared on national TV and hundreds of radio talk shows. She's the founder of the St. Germaine Mystery School and she's an Akashic Records Guide. You also discovered the Akashic Records Guide, Inc. And she runs a sought-after annual program, the Ascension Institute. And as an internationally acclaimed Ascension teacher and Akashic Records Guide, Maureen has been granted access to a dimension that has been closed to most of humanity for eons. And that gives me chills when I read that. It's incredible. As a direct channel from source, she's continually researching, developing, and introducing new methods that will help you connect with your own wisdom, channel, and inspire your spiritual awakening. Maureen has personal connections with the angels, ascended masters, Hathors, divine feminine, and the dragons. I love that you connect to the dragons. We need to talk about that a little because I have a little dragon I was guided to get years ago. So, and I'm a dragon in the Chinese birth sign.
Oh my goodness, that's considered very auspicious.
Ah, interesting. So Maureen is the author of 6 books and the composer of dozens of guided meditations, as well as the steward of the Mandala's Orion series blend. And they are a line of healing essential oil blends channeled by Mary Magdalene. And she is the proud mother of 4 sons. So Maureen, I mean, what can I say? You're like a legend in your own time here. You really are. And yeah, I mean, thank you so much for everything you brought through. I feel like I'm on the edge of tears now. I don't know why, but you bring this kind of to me. It's because it's been incredible. See, here I go.
Yeah. Well, like a lot of people, I've been through a lot. And a good portion of the material that I brought through for me. And then guidance would tell me, no, this is for everybody. You just went through it so you would understand.
Isn't that incredible? I mean, that's what I understood when I went to healing school, that I was supposed to go through this to understand how to help others with it. Because you can't be real or authentic without it, right?
Well, I think you can be, but it gives you greater compassion when you've been there. It also makes it easier for others to connect because they know you know.
Exactly.
Because there's certainly areas I'm sure that you've encountered with clients that maybe you haven't experienced, but because your capacity for compassion for yourself is there, they get it that you get it. It's always reassuring for someone to hear, oh, she was a farm person, oh, she was a city person, because they can relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, the many lives you have lived, Maureen, this is like the lifetime that we're supposed to be totally multidimensional, aren't we? Because
Yeah,
you've lived so many
and
different lives.
I've been very, very fortunate. I have worked very hard and I've endured quite a bit. Financially, I've been close to bankruptcy twice. Once brought on by a group of people who were supposedly my students and signed up to do a big event with me and then all pulled out. And another time when when my first husband left and named me as his creditor. And I called him and I said, I didn't know you could do this. I didn't know you could file bankruptcy while you're still married without the spouse. And he said, actually, you can. And he said, I'm happy if you want to join in. And I was like in shock because he hadn't had a conversation with me saying, this is what I'm going to do if you want to join in. It was more like I received the paper saying I was the creditor to all of our family debt. So I ended up with his side and my side of our family debt. Wow. And, my vantage point was I always thought, well, I'm going to be teaching manifestation. I don't want that on my record. I want people to know that I toughed it out. And I want to say there's no law, there's no crime against not paying your debts if you can't. If you're in a situation, you just can't. And certainly I was pretty close to that. I had like 4 different companies look at what I was trying to pay off. And all of them said, you just need to file bankruptcy. You're like way over the top. And I finally went back to one of the ones that I really liked and said, okay, what do I need to tell you is my earnings to pay off this debt? Because when you go into debt counseling, what happens is you talk about other kinds of counseling. When you go into debt counseling, you are required to pay off your entire debt within 5 years. Wow. On the positive side, and mine was over 60K. So on the positive side, what they do then is they go back to your lenders and they close your accounts and they get the lender to reduce the interest rate to, like 2%, 3%, something really manageable. So you're getting a big chunk of that taken away right away. But then you have to stick with a schedule. And if you miss a payment or you default on a payment or, bounce a check or something, then, you get like 1 strike and you're out. And I remember when I asked this guy, he said, are you sure you want to do it? And I said, yeah, I just need a number so that I can tell the universe this is what I need to manifest. And I did pretty regularly. And then on one occasion, a check bounced and, they called me and said, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'll send another check right away. And the next time I knew I was going to be close, I called them and they said, well, if your check bounces, you're going to get thrown out of this program. So I said to them, can I tell you when to deposit the check? Because, I was living from month to month and some months I'd have full classes and some months I didn't. And they were agreeable to that. And what a celebration after 5 years. And that payment was more than my rent. And it was more than, more money than I'd ever paid out to anybody before on a monthly basis.
Yes.
But I did it. And to those of you who would want to do that, I highly recommend debt counseling because it frees you from that hounding that comes from owing money.
Oh, yeah.
And it puts you in a system and you get lots of counseling and lots of advice. And in my case, because I didn't have a real full-time job, it was on me to manifest what needed to be manifested. But if you can't pay it, then just get through the bankruptcy and get on the other side. I know plenty of people did, and certainly my former husband did, and that worked for him. The downside is that when you go through a bankruptcy, you end up with a 7-year black mark on your skin.
Yes, no credit cards, isn't it? You can't use credit cards. You don't have any.
Yeah. So that's tough. That's really tough. But anyway, I was happy I went through it because I wanted to be able to teach manifestation with a clean slate, with the ability to say, look, you can file bankruptcy. That's cool. I have no judgment of it. Certainly that, and I looked at what my husband did as saying, well, he was making sure I was real, that I was for real. I could do this manifestation thing. And I did.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and that must have been such a validation for you because you saw everything you did was real and everything you were asking. I mean, you were already there, I gather, because you'd said, I'm going to manifest, and you just trusted. You just trusted.
Well, there were plenty of scary
I
moments.
know, I'm sure, especially when those bounce
You
checks.
know,
Oh my God.
and yeah, when you don't know, I remember calling a landlord in New York City and saying to him, I'm not going to be able to pay the rent on time this month. And it was maybe 10 days before the rent was due. And he said, well, when do you think you'll have it? He didn't say anything else, but when do you think you'll have it? And I said, well, I've got another workshop coming in probably within 10 days of the first. And he said, well, just send it to me when you get it.
Beautiful.
A New York City landlord.
Well, you had the right one.
His name was Michael. What can I say?
I know. It's so wonderful. And it just shows how much people can work with you if you ask. I mean, you went and you were very open, and you said, this is where I'm at. You were honest, and he heard you, and that says a lot.
I think that that's true. And I think our biggest fear is admitting how much trouble we're in.
Yeah.
There was a cycle that I was so afraid to open the mail for fear there would be another notice in the mail
Sure.
saying, you're late again on something. So yeah, and that was really the beginning of the heavy duty manifestation work, because obviously if I'm going to pull myself out of it, I really needed to practice what I was being taught by my own guides.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the most wonderful things that I was taught was that when I got a bill or some kind of document, that scared the life out of me, oh my God, how am I going to cover that? I would say, well, the universe knows something I don't know, because I don't know how this is coming together, but I wouldn't have this bill if I weren't supposed to be able to pay it.
That's good.
It would work.
I'm going to tell that one a lot. I'm going to write that one down, because that's important. That's a good one, because you are asking for the universe's support. You're asking, and they're always willing to help, right? The universe is always going to bring to you what you need.
Right. And it's hard to get out of our fear. And one of the things I teach in my manifestation coursework is it's not okay to push your fear away. You must accept it. It's just like your 12-step program. You must accept where you're at before you can fix whatever is going on. And the manifestation system, what I do is it's a little more involved than what I'm saying right now, but I'm just going to give you a short synopsis of it. You start with where you're at. You admit, this is my problem. I can't buy diapers. I can't whatever, this is not working. And then you go over here to where it's so good that you're looking back in time at that pivotal moment that everything shifted. Rather than going to the pivotal moment where everything shifted, you go beyond it. So when I was scared about paying my son's college tuition, what I did was imagined that we were standing on the campus where the graduation took place. He was in his cap and gown, and I looked at him and said, there were some scary moments, but it wasn't that hard. And when I started saying that, I had no idea how the it's not that hard part was going to work. And the scary moment part was really, really real. And I was so scared that I would fail, because he did have a substantial scholarship, but I still had to cover 10K.
Sure.
Which was outside of my earning power. So I couldn't imagine standing there, and I couldn't figure out what to use as how to get myself over that hump. And it finally dawned on me, well, I've got a picture from his high school graduation. I can use that. So set it on my desk. And every time I was scared at work, when I had my corporate job, I would repeat that little mantra to myself, pretending I was talking to him. And that happened many times a day, because many times a day it'd be filled with fear again,
Yeah. And so, I mean, these are the things that can truly help us. I mean, now today we say this a lot moving into 5D, that we're more powerful than we know, but you're proving it, because you put again, it was your trust. I feel like it was your trust that you just gave it to the universe and said, okay, this is it. This is what I have to do. And you let go. You kind of let go of the fear then, didn't you?
Not initially.
Not initially. Well, yeah, okay.
That's the thing,
But
this
it
is,
gave you a little sense of peace, maybe?
yes, for sure. It helped me
Okay.
unhook from
Yeah,
the fear
good.
that was
Yeah, okay.
and by, this is a thing that's so counterintuitive, is when you tell yourself, I'm really afraid, it
Yeah,
actually, it's like letting air out of a balloon. It's like takes all the pressure off of it, because
yeah.
you now admitted where you're at, because so much of us, we push back what we're afraid of. So that phrase, there were some scary moments, help, oh, fine, yeah, it's true, I am scared. And then, like in acting school, you say it till you fake it till you make it. And
Right,
so
right.
I made myself say it, but it wasn't that hard till I started to believe it.
Mm.
And this is really good that you've brought in the 5D thing. The whole difference between 3D and 5D is scarcity, fear,
Yes.
judgment, discomfort, resistance, and all these are part of what we now understand to be transformational tools that will take us through to the fifth dimension. And, one of the things that a lot of people thought from the get-go, and I never saw this, was the idea that we are operating in 5D a lot of the time, but not all the time.
That's very cool. I love that. I love that.
And what I saw was, this is an imaginary line that represents the golden mean, or the phi ratio. A lot of people know the golden mean, and I teach a lot of sacred geometry to help people understand. But the golden mean is actually based on what's called an irrational number. So you're looking at it, I'm creating a straight line to
Mhm.
represent something that's not really straight. That makes sense, okay? Because it hovers. And the real process that we move through is more like this. And it is where you
Oh, yeah. Perfect. Oh, wow.
start here,
Yep.
and you go way above that golden mean, and then you drop below it and above it and below and below and below it. And the mathematics support this concept. So now I'll tell you a short story. One of my sons was the one that taught me a lot.
Mhm.
And I remember calling my mom one day and saying to her, I'm so pleased. He's really stepped up. He did this very cool thing. I'm so proud of him. And my mother said, honey, just remember, kids don't grow up in a straight line. What could that possibly mean? I was totally mystified. And I said, Mother, what does that mean? And she said, well, usually when they do something really mature, they usually follow it with something stupid.
Oh, that's so interesting.
And I burst out laughing, and that's exactly what happened.
Oh,
and
no.
And then when you think about it, as a parent, this is really useful information, right?
Yes, it is.
If you know your kid's going to do something mature and then follow it with something stupid, they're going to get there. They're going to get there. They're just working their way to the resource that they want to go to.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I've never
So-
heard that, I guess, no, I didn't have that kind of info. Your mother was psychic, huh? She already knew
Yeah.
things. Yes, she was.
Yeah, my mother was very psychic and very plugged in, and she knew things. She knew where my father was when he was lost behind enemy lines.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
And she knew things like, one morning she woke up and told my dad, I had a dream your mother died from a stroke, and they lived next door, and that's what happened that day.
Wow.
Other times, I would come home with this big passion. I was going to tell her, this is how it's got to be. I'm going to do this, was something I wasn't allowed to do as a farm girl. And
Uh-huh.
I would show up, and I've been thinking all day, honey, if you still want to do that, it's okay. which is really funny. And then there's the time that I was about 10 and I was reading the book Lives of the Saints. You know, most kids would be reading comic books, but on a farm, you don't do those things. You know, you get educational stuff and your parents don't think frivolous things are super important. So you just don't get to do that. And we watch TV every Sunday night. We watch 60 Minutes, you know, that kind of
Oh,
stuff.
sure. Yeah.
And anyway, this beautiful book, Lives of the Saints, about this thick, you know, like 2 or 3 inches thick, gold lettering, gold leaf on the edges, you know, beautiful book. And one day it wasn't in the bookcase where it was supposed to be. And I remember thinking, where's that book? And I immediately got a picture of where it was. And it was high on a shelf in a closet in another room.
Wow.
So I got a chair in the kitchen and climbed up on the chair, got the book, did what I wanted to do as far as reading, and then I put it back in the bookcase. And I did that to tell my mother,
Yep.
I'm on to you. Don't bother hiding it again. I'll find it.
Wow. So then she understood that you had what she had.
Yeah, probably. You know, we never had a conversation about it ever. I never remember
Really?
it being said, but I remember distinctly, where'd it go? And then I also remember distinctly, oh, I know where it is. I can see it. So as some people would say, oh, that was your first remote viewing.
Right, right. That's how I met you, was through remote viewing. And that's really interesting that you brought that in. But you know, I love when you talk about your youth. So when you stepped into your spiritual path, tell us how, because it's quite an amazing story. How did you, I mean, like, I know you were young and it started very young for you, like
Well, you know,
this. Yeah.
yeah, part of it was I was born awake. So I knew a lot that a lot of people didn't know. And of course, when you're little like that, you don't know that everybody else doesn't know what you know. That's part of it. I remember being aware of being watched, and I wasn't afraid. I realized there were benevolence out there and there were non-benevolent benevolence. And I wasn't scared or anything like that. I always felt close to the saints and the masters as I was growing up.
Did you have particular ones you felt close to?
Well, I really played a lot to Saint Joseph for right work. And I loved Mother Mary, and I never doubted that Mary Magdalene wasn't the beloved of Jesus. And fortunately, in the Catholic school that I went to, it wasn't emphasized one way or the other. So I didn't have to, you know, fight City Hall, if you know what I mean.
Wow, that's pretty good.
I do remember a funny incident in kindergarten when, you know, they pulled the kids up to the front desk one at a time. And when it was my turn, they said, can you tell us what your address is? And I looked at them and said, no. And then they said, well, do you know your phone number? And I looked at them and I said, why are you asking me these questions when I know you've got the answer right in front of you?
That's
because I
clever.
was so protected in such a narrow environment of the farm and you know, church, it never occurred to me that I would need that information for myself until I was an adult. So you guys have to take care of that. I'm not taking care of that.
Wow. How did they handle that? Did they just look at you?
My mother got a note.
Of course, you were too smart. Yeah, you were too smart.
Yeah.
For good there.
Yeah. So anyway, so getting back to 5D and 3D.
Yes.
So
yes.
3D is this place of lovely polarity where lots of contrast and lots of experiences. It is my belief that Source never intended for man's inhumanity to get to this degree. So everything people see around them when they say, how can a creator, how can there be a God that believes in all this stuff or allows all this stuff? The answer is it's free will zone. And that was not part of the plan. That was not part of the original agreement between men. And, you know, we were invaded by beings who were not of 100% God light. They artificially influenced our world, and the depravity that they pushed us into they thought they were doing what they were supposed to do because they were initially, some of the interference was from the guardians who were supposed to be watching over us. And they thought they could find a faster way for men and women to evolve by creating chaos and drama so that we would be inspired to move through it. 4D, and a lot of people don't talk about 4D too much, but I think of 4D as a transition zone. So I joke around and say, think of Grand Central Station. You would never spend the night there unless you got stuck. You would never go to the airport with the intention of spending the night. You go there to get somewhere else. So 4D is a place of high emotion, high transition, lots of movement, high emotion, both positive and negative. And we've got lots of movies that will help us understand that. Like think of the movie with Robin Williams, where he was rescuing his wife from this place. I think it was What Dreams May Come. I'm not sure right now.
Yeah, I remember
but
that.
you know, it was a movie where she was in a dark place because that's what she believed she deserved, because she had, you know, maybe she thought she wasn't as good enough as she could be. It was a brilliant movie, and it really challenged a lot of people's assumptions about things. And so 4D is lots of energy, lots of emotion, and you can go down or up. And when you go up into fifth dimension, getting there from fourth is like super easy. It's like the wheels have been greased or a slippery bar of soap. Once you're headed in that direction, it's almost inevitable that you'll land there. And I often sing it to people so they can hear it. And you can tell, I don't know if you can tell, my voice is a little hoarse from something in the plane.
You've been traveling, yeah, the dryness. Yeah.
But if you know anything about music, and so this, I'm speaking to all of you who are listening,
Right.
and you know your major scale, you know, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, that's 1 through 5 on a major scale, similar to the Do Re Mi song. If you sing 1, 3, 5, 3, 1, that helps you kind of anchor into the major chord. Then you go to 4, 1, 4, 4, 4 wants to go down to 3, 4, 4, 4 wants to go to 5, and 5 wants to go to 1, and it's inevitable. So when you hear it in the music, it makes it easier for you to kind of wrap your brain around, how does this work? Because it's a vibrational data set. We're shifting vibration. You know, in the movie Contact, they talk about Jodie Foster, you know, being in that machine, and then she drops, and before she lands, she has all these experiences. And how does she get there? And why does so much happen in that in-between zone? And this kind of gives you that vantage point. And then 5D is a place where we stop having judgment. We stop having a need to compare. We stop having a need to look at the other guy and saying, well, he's not doing it, that's not fair. And instead, we look at it from a vantage point, I can do better. I can do better. So the vibe is different. That the inspiration isn't from watching others fail or succeed. It's in watching what's out there and thinking, oh, I get that. I can do this. You know, and whatever your creativity is, those of you who are watching, whether it's, you know, creating pictures or music, or your creativity is selecting good films, you're always looking for something that would be an improvement, not to make the last wonderful movie you saw bad, but just, I'm looking for another great movie because I love watching great movies like that. So a lot of people call in the idea of the ascension, and that is a bit confusing because in the tradition of Christianity, the ascension is leaving the body and becoming your most evolved self. And in this reality, what we are going to do this time is transform ourselves into our most evolved self without leaving the body.
Mm-hmm.
And we're kind of floating in and then floating out, floating in and floating out. And I'd like to bring up a very old story about a very famous runner named Bannister, Roger Bannister, who broke the perceived 3-minute mile limitation. And or maybe it's a 4-minute mile. I think it was 3-minute mile. Anyway, it was felt worldwide that the heart would burst if you ran faster than a mile in 3 minutes. So nobody could run faster than that. Now, he was an intern and he was almost done with medical school. So he knew about the heart and he felt that that assumption was wrong. And because he was a runner and that was his hobby, he felt very strongly that it would be possible to beat that limitation. And even though he wasn't nearly as well trained as many athletes all over the world, he succeeded in breaking that barrier. 4 other runners within the next month also ran that fast. And there was a race called Mile of the Century that he and another well-known runner ran, and they both beat the 3-minute mile. Roger Bannister came in first. And it points to what we believe is possible is possible.
Yes.
And it points to that's a 5D experience. That man was inspired to do better than what everybody else thought was possible, not to make somebody bad or wrong. And so part of what our experience in 3D has been is to help us notice that self-improvement, self-growth, evolving what we're capable as humans in a human body is exponential. And 5D is so needed at this time because our technology is way ahead of our spirituality.
Yes.
Our spirituality has not caught up with our technology. And when it does, we are, as a species, are going to be awesome. We're already pretty awesome. I mean, you see a lot of it around you. And so the idea of the ascension in my world is the same as becoming 5D, with the exception of we don't have to leave the body to do so. We don't have to die to get there, which is another awesome thing.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. Wow. I love that. And, that's how I've always understood it. I mean, I never thought, it took a while to get all that, but I understood that we were going to be in our bodies and that we're meant to. This is the big thing we're doing. This is like the big reason why we're doing so well. And that the people that are, working through this to get to this level, that is what our ascension is meant to be in this day, in this modern time. And, they say we're comparing, we're supposed to be ahead of Atlantis and all that, but I don't know. Do you think that's true? What's your thinking on that?
Well, Atlantis is very near and dear to my heart because I was one of the highest spiritual teachers in Atlantis. And I was the one who taught the guy how to operate the crystal, told him what he could do with it and what he couldn't do with it. And he didn't
listen.
He didn't, well, he listened, I guess, but chose to do otherwise. Let's just put it that way. And that's what brought down Atlantis. Now, for a long time, I carried guilt about that. But what I want to say is we are very close to what Atlantis is. There's a lot of technology that's been withheld from us that is right, it's like on the other side of a piece of paper. Flip the paper and we'll see it. So that's number one. Number two, certain technologies have been taken from us as the inventor attempted to put a patent on it. And the way around that would be to have open source and to create things that were special and to tell people, look, this is my invention. And, please honor that, or please make it better and share fairly like I am, or you need my special stuff to go with this. So there's ways around that business because sometimes patents disappear because it's deemed by those that we aren't going to mention that it's a threat to humanity, but in reality, it's really a threat to the powers that be, because
Exactly.
people will have certain things. So there's a lot of technology that once that floodgate opens, we're going to be overwhelmed and underwhelmed with the magic we have at our fingertips. And all I can say is every sci-fi movie you've seen, every fantasy movie you've seen, all the good stuff that you have seen is already in existence. It's
I
already
agree.
in existence.
I agree.
And, one of my friends in the military said to me one time, Maureen, if you know about it, it's already 20 years old.
Right. This is what I keep looking at. How did they know this? How did they invent this? And it's right there in this show telling us this stuff. And I'm like, it's already here. It's here. And I get angry about it. Like, why don't you share that? Why are you so selfish?
Well, it's about power and control. It isn't just
I know.
now.
I don't get
thing
as angry as I used to, but I do get sometimes kind of.
Yeah. I get angry sometimes too when I get disappointed. I totally get that. But here's the thing, and this is very interesting. You can use your crystals. You can use, here's a nice crystal. Here's a beautiful crystal. It's a clear quartz cut in the shape of a heart. And this one is called flame aura. No, it's called aqua aura. No, angel aura.
Okay.
So this is clear. It's called angel aura. And the reason it's called angel aura is because it's got platinum on it.
Oh, I've never seen that one.
So you have the benefit of clear quartz and platinum together. That means the power is really amplified. You can take crystal and say, okay, I need to download whatever. And you can ask the crystal to hold the information and then beam it to you in a way that you can understand, because the crystals are minerals and they have a greater capacity to receive that data set than maybe you or I. Now, what I know is that we can command the power of the universe, whether we have a machine or not. The machinery is the technology that I'm saying our spirituality hasn't caught up with.
Yes.
But years ago, probably 15 or more years ago, I was taught to work with the weather by my guides. And at one point I said to them, what gives me the right to do this?
Ooh.
Who am I? And they laughed at me and they said, who are you not to? And I said, I don't get it. And they said, go on your internet and look up weather manipulation in the country China. Just put that in your search engine.
Boy.
And I was astounded to discover there was already, like science magazines that were publishing on weather manipulation that they were doing in China. So something came up on my screen. I hope it doesn't mess this up.
Nope, I can't see anything.
You don't see it. Okay, good. Okay, so then I said, okay, but I still don't get it. And they said, we are teaching you how to do this so that you can correct what they are doing.
Yay.
And then there's this funny story of one of my students who was watching a tornado come across, I'll say Kansas. I'm not sure what the state was.
It's like Wizard of Oz.
On a TV station, on radar. And then she sees the things change direction and she energetically changes it back to where it was going. And it changes back. And finally, she checks in and asks. Now, when I teach this to people, and I don't teach it very often, I ask people to ask permission. Ask permission from your higher self, the people who might be affected by whatever it is you're doing, from Mother Earth or the elemental kingdom, so that you're not just using your will the same way that others are using their will over us.
Okay.
So you always start out by checking in and finding out, is this appropriate? Is this appropriate action for me?
Yes.
Okay. So when she checks in to find out what's going on, she's shown an Indian shaman and that the tornado was diverted towards the reservation. And every time it headed towards the reservation, the shaman was turning it around and sending it back, which was the whole thing, which is so funny. They both then ended up directing it into I'll call it neutral territory, but classic, right? You think
Yes,
you
that's
don't know how to
incredible.
do things, and we do. And that's the part where you had said, we're far more powerful than we realize. There are many tools that are at our fingertips that we can use. But in order to use them with absolute purity, we need to step into our power by being in integrity. And that means admitting when we get caught, or even before we get caught. It's always better to admit before you get caught,
Always, always.
I borrowed your iPhone and I dropped it. And now the screen's cracked.
Right.
So rather than having someone discover it, that's, the discovery part's not so hot.
No.
Okay. So that part is integrity. And then also to do your best. And this is an important thing. Everyone has their own challenge, but you might say, don't steal to your kids, but then you come home with extra napkins or pencils from the office or whatever it is without thinking that it's any big deal, but you're still setting the standard. So sometimes that's a little difficult. But when you ask your angels and guides to tell you when you are out of integrity, they will. And they'll call you out and give you that heads up. Hey, that's not true. You better fix that. And so here's my practical solution. So you're in a conversation and somebody says, oh yeah, you did such and such. And that was a story of a story of a story. And that the third time it got repeated, it was exaggerated. So now you have to go back and say, well, actually, I wasn't first in the class, but I was in the top 10, like that. You see, you just take the moment and make the correction. So well, actually, is a good way to fix it, even if you've said it, or you could say, I misspoke, or I remembered wrong, or actually, that was my ego talking. I'm now going to tell you from my heart,
I love it.
and like good
That's
cop,
true.
bad cop.
Yep. We were all guilty of that. Some, at least a few times for sure. Yeah. Yeah. I have a question about, you always talk about you really taught people how to connect to their higher self. And I know that's a big thing for you. And I think it's important because I hear about so many people saying, I'm connecting to my higher self now. And, I really listen to my higher self, and you do a teaching now. So my question is, do you have to be connected to your higher self before you can move into 5D?
I wouldn't use the word have to.
You get to.
You get to easier, and you certainly find your way. You find your way with grace and ease a lot easier. One of the things I challenge people with all the time is, okay, so you think you have a good higher self connection. So do you follow it 100% of the time?
I know.
And now they're challenged because they either got to tell the truth or they got to fib. And if they're fibbing, their higher self is going to give them grief about that later. So, it gets pretty funny, and most people say, well, most of the time. And my response is, then you don't believe that you have a higher self connection. And only when it works for you that you're willing to follow it.
Yes.
And my opinion is that when you can follow your higher self, when your higher self is telling you something that is counterintuitive, that's when you have a good higher self connection. So anybody who says to me, well, most of the time, my response is, then you need to do the higher self protocol, because the higher self protocol is a 6 weeks program that's super easy to do. There's 3 rules or 3 protocols that you follow for 6 weeks. And it's so easy, and it's a lot of fun, because all you need to do is you go into meditation and you ask your higher self, give me a symbol or signal for yes, no, and neutral separately. Each time you wait. Some people get body confirmation. Some people get colors or visions of things. One woman saw a thumbs up and a thumbs down for no. Neutral always is something in the middle that's very faint, but it's there. So you make sure you get some kind of signal or symbol, and maybe 5 to 10% of the whole population don't get anything. And there is a workaround for that. But assuming you're part of the majority of the population, you're going to get something. You're going to get a color, you're going to get a shape, you're going to get a ting in your back, or a whisper in your ear, a thing in your gut. Something is going to feel different. And there's a funny story with this, because there was one woman in a class, and it was a big class, and they were all in this big circle. And one woman said, I asked my higher self for my yes signal, and my ear started to itch. So I told my body, calm down. I'm waiting for my signal. And then my toes started to itch. Calm down. I'm waiting for my signal. And then my whole body started to itch. And that's when I said, all right, I'll take the itchy ear. Okay. So part of it has to you be willing to accept it. And a lot of times your higher self has a sense of humor and will deliberately give you a symbol or signal that is comical, because it helps you get out of your ego. Okay. So first things first, you get a symbol or signal. Then the first rule is you ask 30 or 40 questions a day about unimportant things that you are willing to do either way. So if you don't care whether you wear the brown shoes or the blue shoes, you ask higher self, is my highest best good to wear the blue shoes? No. My higher self, is it highest best good to wear the brown shoes? No. Higher self, is it my highest best good to wear white shoes? Yes. Really? Yes. So you put on the white shoes, and then you find yourself in a store and you're trying on a white dress, and it's so much easier to see how it's going to look because you got the right shoes on. That kind of stuff starts to happen. You end up at a restaurant where you were not particularly excited about going to, but it didn't matter to your friend, and it was your turn to pick. You show up, and somebody that you've been looking for is there, and you get a chance to chat with them. So all kinds of really amazing things happen. This is all practice. And then there was a crazy story about a woman in China who we were at a retreat center, and she said, why would my higher self lie to me? And she was really kind of mad, indignant. And I said, well, what did you ask your higher self? And she said, well, I'm a vegan, and I asked my higher self this morning if I should have meat. My higher self said yes. Why would my higher self do that? And of course, everybody in the classroom is laughing, because the second rule is no matter what you get, you're supposed to follow through. Okay. So here she's asking a question she's not willing to opt in or opt out. And the second part is she she
wouldn't do it.
She was testing her higher self to see what would give her the answer she wanted.
Oh.
And the third answer is you set aside all your other divination tools. So you set aside your pendulum, you set aside the muscle testing or the kinesiology or all that just for 6 weeks, because otherwise you'll be tempted to test it. And you're not supposed to be doing any testing whatsoever. This is all, like relaxed, fun and games, because you find out cool stuff that you weren't expecting to have happen. And it's so amazing what happens. I have so many wonderful stories, and this is an older story, but it's just so wonderful because when I was still working in the corporate world, I kept trying all day to reach the reporter that was going to get that I hoped would get my story in his paper. And I had a good higher self connection. So I'd been practicing it for quite some time. I was already teaching and, working, doing the weekend circuit, and never got through to the guy. And at 5 minutes till 5, my higher self comes in and says, call the guy. Now, I'm pretty strong-willed and I'm pretty determined. So at this point, I said to my higher self, I don't think so. I'm going home. My kids are hungry and I got to fix dinner. Call the guy. No, I'm hungry too, and I'm tired. Call the guy. So now here I've been told twice by my higher self, call this guy. I'm not waiting for him to tell me, or my higher self to tell me a third time. So I pick up the phone. The guy answers. The actual reporter answers. And keep in mind, I've been getting voicemail all day. And he says, Maureen, how could you possibly know I would be here at this time? I am never here at this time. All I could do was laugh. How am I going to tell him? Oh yeah, my higher self told me to call. Okay, so that's not the best part. The best part is that the next day, my new story made the front page of the
Wow.
largest newspaper in the state.
Wow. Well, it's good that you listen, boy. I mean, this is a great lesson for us.
Well,
Wow.
and there were lots of reasons to not stop and do that.
Yes. Yes.
I think that's really important. The higher self, once you finish your 6 weeks of practice, you can ask your higher self anything. But the other thing that happens is your higher self starts giving you good advice. And when you get that good information, you can choose to either follow it or not. But I tell people, once you get past that 6-week practice period, if your higher self tells you to do something and you don't do it, you'll regret it. And you'll laugh at yourself for not having listened. And depending upon its importance, your higher self might only argue with you for one drama. I remember asking my higher self if I should go to the movies with some friends. Now, I didn't ask my higher self a second time, but I didn't like that answer and I went anyway. And the movies turned out to be a real dog. And it was so bad, I asked my friends, how did you like that movie? And they said, we thought it was horrible and we wanted to leave, but we didn't want to hurt your feelings. Okay?
But they picked it.
This stuff up.
Yeah.
So, what happens is when we build that higher self connection with a willingness to follow through no matter what, we give ourselves such a gift, because then we give our higher self permission to come in and tell us stuff that we need to know. As a woman, every once in a while I get lipstick on my teeth or on my face. It doesn't belong there. It only belongs on the lips.
Right.
But not everybody will tell you. Some people will look at you and they kind of look away.
Oh, no.
I'm telling her.
I would tell you.
So your higher self will tell you. And I think that is so amazing that we have this gift that's at our fingertips. All we have to do is spend 6 weeks polishing it. So the 3 rules are very simple. Unimportant, insignificant questions, 30 or 40 times a day that you're willing to follow through. Number 2, always follow through, no exceptions. And 3, no other divination tools. And, that's just yummy.
Yes. And, I have heard you say that somewhere. So I tried doing it. I couldn't get through the 6 weeks. How come?
Put some Post-it notes up. You're probably pretty, people who work hard to be where they're at, and you've been through a lot. You've had to use your will to create a certain life for yourself. So what you want to do is have a little chat with your will and say, look, there's all these cool stories about how when you and my higher self get married, you're going to have the best time, and so am I. And the second thing that happens is when you do 6 weeks of practice, the will that wants you to be happy gets to see that your higher self is always right. And that's why the practice period is so important, because then you develop a history, and the history is reliable because it's personal and you get it. When something really wonderful happens because your higher self told you to do something that you did not want to do, hands down, there's no question. You always want to ask your higher self.
Yeah. I've been doing it a lot now. I've been asking, and I know there was something else you talked about. If you don't say the word higher self, sometimes you're not getting the answer from the higher self. And that's important too. So I was like, oh, that's a good one, because I've asked and I get the wrong answer. And I'm like, what the heck? This is supposed to be my higher self telling me, and this didn't work out. Right. And I didn't say higher self.
Exactly. So, and when I've asked, I've only done that once, because all it took for me was one wake up. And I came home and complained to my higher self. What was that all about? That was a big waste of my time. And my higher self said, you didn't ask. And I went, yes, I did. Blah, blah, blah. And my higher self said, no. You asked, but you didn't say higher self. And your lower self answered. And the answer you got was perfect for your lower self, because it satisfied your ego and your polarity and the little girl in you, blah, blah, blah. But it was not for your highest and best good.
Yeah. I mean,
that's why you always use higher self, the name higher self. Don't give your higher self a nickname. Don't call your higher self to anything else. Just call higher self, higher self. And then secondly, is it in my highest and best good to And then you fill in, take this action, some kind of action step you're going to take. You're not asking what other people are supposed to do. You're asking what you're supposed to do. And that reliable connection does branch out to more possibilities and certainly increases your connection to source. So this is like the tip of the iceberg, but even having that, and I'll tell you another funny story. I am certified as a nonprofit administrator and as a nonprofit, a certified nonprofit executive. And those tests are very difficult. It's like taking the bar. You just don't, because you're selling stocks and bonds, you're selling instruments. And when I was in the corporate world, I had that as a goal that I wanted to do it. So when I sat for one of the exams, and I'm working for a little nonprofit as the fundraiser, and I'm part of the citywide agency of nonprofit administrators. So, the Red Cross, my agency, and a whole bunch of other nonprofits are all meeting once a month, And I took the test, and there were many parts of the test that I wasn't sure about the answer, but I would ask my higher self, and my higher self gave me the answer.
Wow.
And so when I got my test results, I had passed. And the woman who was head of the Red Cross fundraising did not pass the first time. She knew I was taking it, everybody knew, like that. And she walks in and points her finger at me. How did you pass that test on the first try? All I could do was laugh. You can't tell people this stuff.
You're right.
And then another student in the records who was getting her license as a therapist. And she was very well qualified. She'd done tons of work, but like any of these exams, you cram beforehand to try and make sure you're really up on everything.
Right.
So she was planning on having a 6-week cram period, and she needed to block that time in her life. And so she was asking in the records if she should take the exam in January or in March. And the record keeper said, well, you could pass the test right now. And she said, how is that possible? I haven't studied. And they said, ask your higher self anything you don't know. And she said, is that legal? Okay.
That's funny.
And the answer the record keepers gave her was so funny. They said to her through me, if you were in a crisis situation and you had to choose what action to take, would you ask your higher self? And she said, yeah. And they said, it's the same.
Wow. Isn't it incredible how we even doubt our higher self sometimes?
Well, and see, that's the whole thing. It is the ego that hasn't. I like to say that when you get to that point of that higher self, you've got the experience. Think about how do we make a decision to buy a car? We test drive a car. We read on the internet. We read the reviews and the consumer reports. We ask our friends. We check YouTube. We check all these resources. Those are all historical data. And then we make our decision. When we check in with our higher self, what we're doing is we're creating a data set because we practiced for 6 weeks and on stuff that we didn't care one iota about. We got super results. Other times, it just came out magically and we couldn't have set this up another way. It's cool stuff like that. So when you are buying that car, you would do all the same things you would normally do that I just named. And then you narrow it down to 1 or 2 cars and you'd ask your higher self, is it my highest and best good to buy this car at this time? Your higher self says, yes, it's a no-brainer. If your higher self says no, you have to walk away. And if you don't walk away and you buy the car, you will soon discover, oh, I should have listened to my higher self. So what happens is when you get all the practice in about stuff that you don't care about, that just happens, your personality, your ego wants you to be happy. It wants you to get what you want. And when the ego gets it, literally, like ego is a person and your higher self is a person. That's not true. But if it were, what happens, the ego gets it, the higher self always got the goods. And it becomes the new best friend, or I like to say they get married and they live happily after. So
and yeah, that's powerful to know, because this is a tool that helps you through your entire life. You don't need anything else. You don't need anything else when you can. This is when people say you should trust yourself. but that is your higher self they're talking about.
That's right.
Your higher
But
self.
they are not teaching you how to connect with your higher self. And
No.
that's what happened to me. I had every teacher in the world said, what you're saying, but no one had any tool to do that.
Right.
And so I asked my higher self to give me the tool that I could use to teach others. And it worked so amazingly with the students. Even I was in awe that it was that good and that accurate. So it's a very simple protocol, highly accurate, and it gives you a level of accuracy that you can live with. It'll save your life.
Yes. And the thing is, and you always have to know the right, well, you asked the right question, Maureen. That seems to be one of your gifts. A lot of us, I don't always ask the right question sometimes. I'm like, why didn't I think of that question? So I don't know. You just
well, sometimes whenever you get a neutral, and this is is the fine tuning of this, and a lot of this is in all my books, because I put the higher self connection in every book so that it would be known that this is important, and this is more important than anything because it'll help you land where you want to be. So when you don't want to follow your higher self, you can ask again. Now, one time my husband said to me, well, could you ask again? And I asked again, and he said, wait a little bit, could you ask again? And I looked at him and said, what is this? Keep asking till you get the answer you want.
Right.
And so when we don't want to follow through, but we've asked, because it's an important decision and we care, should I take this road trip with the friend or should I do this? And again, you don't use the word should, you always ask, is it in my highest and best good? Because should is a kind of like a mom word, you should do this.
Oh yeah. It's like the wagging of the finger. Yeah.
Exactly. And should implies that your higher self is better than you, and it's not. It's simply more plugged into the part of reality that you don't have access to. And it's a resource. So your higher self connection and then practicing it and playing with it over 6 weeks gives you a level of accuracy that then you don't have to wonder, And it's like the difference between, I wonder if my friend will show up for dinner, but I know the sun will come up tomorrow. And so you move from a place of trusting to knowing. And then it's that knowing that allows you to act even when it makes no sense. It makes no sense, but you do it anyway, because it's okay.
Yeah, that's a powerful tool. And I'm going to do those 6 weeks again. I think I'm going to have to, because I kept using my fingers, because I'll use that little finger pull and I'm like, oh no, I used it. I wasn't supposed to use it.
Yeah, it's a habit. So put some little Post-it notes around,
Okay,
on your refrigerator, on your medicine cabinet, like that. And that will help you. Yep. And then, if you live with someone, you can say, I'm practicing with my higher self. So if you're in, indecision about where we should go for dinner or, anything you want to do that we might do, but maybe we don't have to, it'll help me with my practice. If you'll ask me, can you check in? Is it in our highest and best good to do X? And that's, I don't book an event without checking in. We don't buy advertising without checking in. Wow. We do everything. So
it's so good to know that, because I think it gives us such a firm foundation to trust ourselves and love ourselves even more. It connects to that self-love, doesn't it? It really makes us trust us, and it's that God source part of us that's right there that we're ready to use when we understand that it's there and we can use it. And you're giving us that tool that is simple and that we can choose to use it or not. And I think it's just so powerful to know that. So I know we've been talking a while. I don't know if you want to talk anymore, but I had a couple more questions. You tell me.
You do have more questions?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, why don't we see where the questions take us? And I do have a few ideas that I'll close with. But
sure. Whatever you want. Well, the only thing I want to ask you, this is something that's driving me kind of cuckoo, because people talk about the Akashic records, right? And I know that is something that you teach a lot and you've been working with, and you have that extra little thing there that you got for your Akashic records that you use. And I've never really become an Akashic record reader, so I don't do that. I don't even claim I do that. But there's people that I hear so many things about the Akashic records. Okay, someone just recently said, well, we're not allowed to go to the Akashic records. You know, my daughter went there and she was told, no, you can't come in. You're not allowed.
That's true. You are not allowed to go into the Akashic records.
Okay, so that isn't
So
true.
the message was very straightforward, very clear. But the misinterpretation is, it doesn't mean you're not allowed to access data from the Akashic records. It means you're not allowed to go in. So it's like going to someone's house and saying, I know you have this book that I need. Can I borrow it? And the owner says, I don't think so. I'm not loaning that book out. What do you need? And so that you tell them what you need, and they come back with a book and they read to you what's in it.
Okay.
And then the book goes back where it belongs. So she's right. You're not allowed to go into the Akashic records. And it's a nuance in the wording, because a lot of us will say, we're opening the Akashic records to you, but we're really at the threshold. So we're at the edge of the area where the Akashic records are. There are Akashic records guides who reside within the records, and they bring information forward.
Okay.
So any channel that is claiming that they're actually going into the records isn't true. And even people who've had, I'll call them experiences, where they've had, like a book put in front of them and they turn the pages. They're not in the record. They're looking at a book, you see.
Okay.
So the records themselves is a huge field of energy. And it's like some of the movies we've seen. There was a kids movie that I saw once with my kids, where the protagonist, the little boy, was able to fly into other areas of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little bit like that. So we're able to acquire knowledge. We're able to get answers, but they're coming through the beings who are serving us. And if you went into the records and you saw the person that murdered you 3 lifetimes ago, and you're now married to them, you might have a little problem with that. You're already mad at them for messing with something in the kitchen. And now that you realize it killed you, you're like, what the heck? So you would have an emotion. That emotion would then impact the records, because it's so fluid. It's like a wave pool.
Okay.
So the energy is constantly moving and shifting and evolving. It's like a big swirl. So
would the records actually tell you that about your husband? Would it actually tell you that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it would. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. You might need to ask, you might say, what's going on here? Because this happened and this happened. Okay. And then you go, well, because in the past life, you were taken out by your husband and, whatever.
How do you reconcile that one?
Well, I can tell you that it happened to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And when we were in the records and we were given the storyline of what happened, it was not revealed who the perpetrator was, only what had happened to me, or how I had been taken out. And so I knew there was a problem. And so we asked the lady who was in the records for me, and what we had done, which is very unusual, is 2 of us were in the records together. Okay. And so when we finished the phone call and she closed the records, my husband at the time looked at me and said, you didn't close the records yet. And I said, I know, there's one more question to ask. I wanted to be asked in front of the other lady.
Okay.
And I said, ask who the perpetrator was. And of course, then the answer was clear, because he was the one asking. Our records were both open and we had.
Were you with him doing this together?
we were in the records together with a third person who was also in the.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So she was doing most of the talking and I was simply there as the observer. And also I wanted to validate whatever she was getting.
Okay.
Because we knew it would be heavy duty. And he started to cry. I mean, he was devastated.
He didn't know that. He didn't know that either, obviously.
No,
No.
no. And in this lifetime, he got to make it up to me.
Oh, that's
So it
nice.
wasn't all bad. There
Okay.
were some, you know, not so cool moments, but
That's a big knowing. That's a big one. That's a
mhm.
big one. Yeah. But that's beautiful that you reconciled that with, well, you kind of did that together. He kind of, you know, he cleared his karma with you, I guess you'd say, right? Yeah.
Well, that's a really interesting comment.
Okay.
And maybe we could close with that.
Uh-huh.
My guides have been telling me since 1995, there is no more karma.
Right. And I've heard that too. And someone I have recently talked to also said there's no more karma. Who
Right.
said there's no more, but you can't have instant karma. Is that
Well, that's how should I put it? That's a workaround. All right.
okay?
First, let me talk about that, and then I'll give you my little special
Sure.
close.
Sure.
Calling it insta karma is like saying I'm stuck in 3D and I'm going to keep taking hits in 3D.
Oh.
When the minute you decide I'm waking up in 5D, you don't need any more karma. You definitely do not need karma to teach
Yeah,
you what
I
you
don't. I definitely don't want it.
Well, here's some
I'm
things
so
you can
tired
say.
of all that. Yeah.
Right. You can say I'm waking up in 5D when you go to bed. You can say I'm learning all my lessons through love. That would be no karma, right? Because if your best friend tells you you're bad breath or you've got a bunch of typos in this document, it's not a problem because this person loves you and they want you to do your best.
Sure. Yeah.
But you know, if a stranger said, "Ew, look at this. You're not so hot." You feel, you know, it
No.
would make you feel horrible.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think instant karma is an easy way to say we still have karma. Okay.
It's
But it's
confusing.
only
Yeah.
by choice. It is only by choice.
Okay.
So you do something mean or stupid or aggressive or whatever, and you're not really thinking about the impact it is on other people,
Mm-hmm.
but you still chose to do it. So yeah, you're going to get some ramifications, but that's not instant karma. That's because you recognized your behavior and you feel horrible about it.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not like you had to have somebody be mean to you. You see, that would be karma. It's not karma. It's not instant karma. Instant karma is years ago when my son observed me. I was probably in a verbal, you know,
Altercation.
yeah, altercation with my husband at the time. And I probably wasn't as nice as I could be. And then I'm going, oh man, I have a stiff neck. What's going on? And my little boy would say, Mom, that's instant karma. You were mean to Daddy. That's instant karma.
Okay.
Okay. That those two events are not related. If, on the other hand, I'm obnoxious to him and he says, you know, I don't like it when you talk to me like that. And I think I might have been wrong, but I'm not going to take the way you talk to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's not karma. That's humans interacting and relating to each other
Okay.
in a normal, egalitarian way.
Well, that's a good clarification. I like that. Because
Now,
I recently went through that sentence, that situation right there.
yeah. So that person using the word instant karma is simply trying to help people grok or get their arms around the fact that they're still stuck in 3D and what happens if, or what happens to this guy, or what happens to that guy. And so I was told in 1995, and when I was told in 1995, I was a lone ranger. And
Yeah, that's a long time ago.
right.
I remember that till recently, probably 5 years ago, 6 years ago, something like that.
Exactly. So
Wow.
when I was told this, I thought, that's really wild. that's really wild. I wonder how that's going to work out. You know, it was like in total, not denial, but like, what the heck? What the heck? You know, it's like someone looking you in the eye and saying, well, you know, I'm from outer space. I'm just wearing a suit, you know, a human suit to keep you comfortable.
Right.
Do you want to see the real me? And you're thinking,
Right.
I don't think so. You know, okay. So here we go. My little, where was I? The
instant karma, yeah.
Instant karma.
Karma's ended. Yes, karma's ended.
Karma's ended. So I was giving a talk. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So I tell my really good friends who studied with me, they're also devout Buddhists. And I'm trying it out on them because I'm still like in total awe that this is true. And it did not go well. So I kind of, you know, kind of eased it. Then I started asking me, so I need to understand this. I need to understand this. Okay, so here's the pièce de résistance. This came a few years later when I was giving a lecture in Hong Kong to the students about no more karma, trying to help them understand. And think about, you know, in the Asian countries, karma is more accepted than anywhere in the West. I mean, you know, New Age Westerners, we're fine with it, but a lot of Westerners aren't, you know.
They don't even understand it. I mean, they don't even know what chakras are. I mean, they don't know a lot of things. So,
right.
You know.
He said, this is from Sanat Kumara, I believe, or Great Divine Director, one of those two. I got to look it up. He said, the game is over.
Wow.
Referring to the 3D game.
And that was in 1995.
No, that was like 2002.
Oh, okay.
This particular message that came through me.
Okay.
I was explaining it in overseas to
okay.
Maybe even later than that. Maybe it's in one of the books. So the quote, the date are in there. Okay. I'm just saying when I was first told, and then when this piece of information came through, which I felt really nailed it. The game is over, implying the 3D game is over. The game will end when there are no more players.
Right. But we didn't even know that there was first of all, I don't think many knew there was a game. And then second of all, we didn't know we could end it. Now we're knowing we're ending it because I know for sure we're done. We're done. We're done. Most of us are done now, right?
Right.
And we get why.
The third part was, will you be the first to leave or the last?
Oh gosh, I'm already out. I've been out for a while.
Exactly. That was my reaction. I'm out.
I think I was out in 1992 or whatever. I don't know because I started to step out of it. Let's put it that way. That was the beginning of my total wake up calls. Yeah. And then I was way out for probably 2000 or I was in healing school when I knew it was time. 1999, I think was my real wake up call. But that's awesome. I mean, yeah, it's so powerful. And oh my goodness, what you brought through is so powerful. And thank you so much. And I know you have a special gift you're giving the listeners. So do you mind sharing it? I can, you know, it's yeah.
I would very much like to share it. Hang on a second here. Can you pull my screen up? That's supposed to be showing me this.
I know it's the golden thread.
It's called the golden thread, but it's actually like 4 CDs.
Oh, okay.
And we call it the golden thread because it's a package of golden meditations.
Oh, beautiful.
So the first one is Dancing in the River, Golden Opportunity. And that meditation alone pulled me out of the doldrums and a whole bunch of other people. It is a marvelous, marvelous meditation that when you do it, you bring in this beautiful river of golden opportunity, and it covers your furniture, and then you let it recede so it doesn't, you know, drown you. And then, you know, you bring it back in the next day like that till it becomes, you know, permanent. We have another one called Bring in the Golden Glow. And that's a really short and sweet one that opens your heart and makes a shower of gold around you that really amps up your energy. Another meditation in this is the Golden Bowl meditation, activating your sixth sense. And this is a meditation that amplifies the sinus cavities around the body.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is, even if you didn't think you had a sinus problem, your sinuses will open up and you'll be able to have a physical reaction that proves to you that it's really happening. And my irreverent name for that meditation is, it's the satellite dish to call home.
Oh, wow. I love it.
And then the golden time meditation is a meditation of walking into the future where everything worked out.
Yeah. I've heard you talk about that, about 5D, which we didn't quite get to that part. And
Right.
how you can
Another
work with
time.
that about 5D in the future. That's beautiful. Thank you, Maureen.
So these are all available as a download. And what happens is, when they share their information with us, then you get to download all 4 of them.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. We really appreciate it. And I know all the listeners, if they don't know you, they're going to certainly check you out now, because I think they were ready for you. I think it's always a person always comes into your life when you're ready for them. Like the teachings that you brought through. I mean, as I said, you've been ahead of the times in so many ways. It's just mind blowing to me how much you knew ahead and you bringing to people. And those that were ready were there. They were following you and they were there. And well, of course, I have to always ask this question. Any final visions or words you think people need to hear from in 2023 or even beyond, whatever you feel is important?
I think 2023 is going to be a pivotal year for
Mhm.
all of humanity. I think we're going to hit a point that's going to be close to critical mass or critical mass. And of course, when you hit critical mass, the teeter-totter flips, and then you become the majority and everybody else gets to slide to their end and kind of work
Yay.
their way to balance. And as far as final words, one of the things that you can do for yourself every day that will change the world one person at a time, and that is, I'm asking for a day of heaven on earth for me and everyone I come in contact with and everyone I am in contract with.
I
And
love it.
that just sets the field for everybody around you.
Yes, that is very important. I'm pasting that one around my house for sure. Absolutely. That is so beautiful. So thank you again, Maureen. I'm going to thank our audience for being here, and we always love to hear from you. So if you have any comments for Maureen, please email them to us. We'll have all Maureen's information after the show here, and you'll see it on the emails that come out. And Maureen, you know, I just want to thank you so much for being this relentless and incredibly passionate and relentless in the best way, enthusiastic. I call you the goddess of transformation, because you have shared so much with us. And the more I hear and listen to you, the more I have learned how much your work has immeasurably helped humanity. And we are so grateful. I am so grateful. And I know everyone who knows you and has been working with you, and now in the future will find you. Well, I'm going to thank you for so much that you brought through. So thank you so much, Maureen.
Thank you for the opportunity to get to do what I love.
Yes. Thank you. And the divine human is rising, and we hold unlimited potential and gifts as we create our new earth realities. And thank you, Maureen, for your courage in, owning your divine light, because that's my favorite phrase. And as we raise our hearts in frequency, know that we are nourished by the love of the universe. And I am Yarra Atlantica Miller, and soul name of Janet Miller, and I will see you all on the next episode.